Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Ben Crossman, and I hope all of you are having a fantastic day where, of course, we will be having our guest, which is going to be Marcel Gagne. He is, of course, the host of Cooking with Linux. He has content all over, and of course, he's a prolific writer and has been in the Linux scene for a long time. So, of course, he is our resident Linux expert, where we will be discussing everything Linux. He comes up with a bunch of great topics, everything from distributions to to news, rumors, things like that, and also some helpful things. Hey, if you are just getting into the operating system, then you can always go back and find past shows where Marcel has highlighted some programs and useful features of Linux, and he continues to do so even today, where I believe today we will be talking about Steam and how they have made so many more games available through, of course, their Steam platform for the Linux community. And on top of that, of course, we will be talking about Audacity. Now, all that being said, I apologize. We're of course getting we're still trying to get Marcel here on the program with us, and that has led to a couple of snafus. And let me see. Hopefully he is here and we can get the show started. And again, before we get Marcel on, a couple of things, including computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find today's show notes, which are excellent because Marcel includes everything from the links to any programs, to pictures, to all the different ways you can get in touch with Marcel himself if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or anything like that. Now, all of that you can find there at computeramerica.com in the show notes right there on the homepage. Also, while you're there, be sure to check out the social media contest with brought to you by Logitech and the live video stream, which you can also find over at twitch.tv/computeramerica, where we also have a chat room. Yeah, I know. The chat room went away for a little while, and it is back. So if you want to check out the chat room, feel free to do that. So I believe we have our guest on. So let me just confirm real quick. Marcel, how you doing? I can hear you okay. And since I do, I'm going to take you off mute. And there we go. Yeah, I know it's behind the scenes. It can get a little hairy, but you made it work. We're okay.
Well, what's weird is that, of course, just before I did this, I did the Skype test call, and when it plays me back, I sound like I'm a chipmunk.
And we are picking up on that, and there's a little bit of an echo actually as well.
There's a little bit of an echo.
Yeah, and you, man, that's the weirdest. I mean, I was just telling everyone that we're going to be talking about Audacity. I don't know if you changed any, audio settings to work with that.
Well, what I'm doing is I'm actually using my I'm using my external microphone. I have here. Let me just I'll put it in there. See, it's a Zoom microphone. It's an external Zoom microphone that I use when I record my videos and I do my Cooking with Linux show. And it is always, it never lets me down, except when I try to do like a Skype call or something. It's like
that is just the weirdest thing. Here, I'm gonna hang up. I'm gonna try calling you and see if that changes anything. Okay.
All right.
Sorry, everyone. And again, hey, the joys of live radio. So let's try this again one more time and give him a call. So I know, and none of you can hear this, and that's perfectly okay. Hey, and I guess this segment of the show brought to you by Skype. All right, so check. Marcel, how you doing?
Check.
You sound much better and with no echo.
You know, I don't actually. This is not my ideal situation. Actually, I say it's not my ideal situation.
Is this your phone?
I'm using my phone at the moment.
Oh no, we can't have you do the phone for the whole show. Especially since connections tend to drop like they just did. So yeah, we definitely can't have you on your phone. All right, so this actually happened to me, and hey, live troubleshooting. This actually happened to me. Let it ring for a couple times on your phone, and it should pop up on your computer. So
it should show up on my computer.
Yeah. So just let it ring on your phone for a little bit because it pops up there because Microsoft's stupid, and then
You know what? I'm happy just to use the phone. If you're happy with me using the phone, I'm happy using the phone.
Yeah. All right. Just let us know if your arm gets tired. We'll turn off the video and we'll do our thing. So, okay. So that contagious laughter right there, everyone. We can go ahead and throw that up on the screen. That's Marcel Gagne, as I was saying before, our resident Linux expert and of course host of Cooking with Linux. Marcel, how you doing? Welcome on to Computer America.
I'm doing just fine. I'm doing very well. Thank you. How are you doing, dude?
I am doing well as well can be. I'm glad that we were able to get you on this month. And yeah, looking forward to today's show, of course. Now, before we get started, why don't we go ahead and just tell everyone you have your introduction here in the show notes. I was directing people to, but tell us a bit about yourself and your connection with Linux.
Oh, good grief! It's funny. I actually was asked that question. I did a talk at GTA Lug, which is the Greater Toronto Area Linux User Group, 2 weeks ago or something like that. And the person who introduced me said, "Well, this is Marcel Gagne, and I really don't know where to start. This guy's been all over Linux and open source for a long time. So here he is." And that was my introduction. But the short version is, I've been involved in technology for as far back as I can recall. I got interested in computers when I was a kid. I have been solidly interested in pretty much everything tech that you can think of, but with a special emphasis on computers and computer technology for a heck of a long time. And then at some point I started writing for Linux Journal. I wrote a column for Linux Journal called Cooking with Linux, which kind of got everybody's attention of the sort of stuff that I would be doing. And after that I wrote several books on Linux and open source software. I've been on radio and television. Hey, radio, we're here, we're on radio. I did some TV shows with Leo Laporte on Call for Help, and I did I do YouTube videos, Cooking with Linux YouTube videos, and the occasional talk at conferences and things like that. So I've kind of been at it for a heck of a long time, and that's me. I'm the Linux guy. Some people refer to me as the Linux chef because of my Cooking with Linux column. So.
Although, to be fair, I don't know exactly your experience actually cooking. You definitely do pair Linux with a nice wine, but your actual cooking credentials, I've never confirmed myself. So take that with a grain of salt.
Honestly, I'm actually a good cook. I really am. I love being in the kitchen. I actually do. I would not call myself. I would not. I sure as heck wouldn't go on a TV show, up against a chef. I sure as hell wouldn't let Gordon Ramsay.
You sound a lot like myself, where I enjoy cooking, but I always thought I would never turn this into a career. I could never cook for someone else, but I love to cook for myself, and I love to cook tasty things. I
love to cook for guests. I mean, I love it when people come over. But that is different. That's a friendly audience at that point. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So, all right. So, cooking aside, of course, as we said before, in the show notes, lots and lots of different links that you can check out. And if you want to hear more or see more or read more, whatever, of Marcel Gagne, you can see it there. Now, for everyone out there simply listening to the radio, Marcel just took a sip of wine, and that is a theme here that he introduces the show every day. And hey, a little bit of day drinking never hurt anyone. Talk about today's wine.
Well, actually the whole wine thing goes back to the Cooking with Linux column. In Linux Journal, I I played a French chef who had a restaurant called Chez Marcel, and I had the second best wine cellar in the entire world. I never explained where the first best was, but I claimed to be the second best. And every month I introduced a wine. Now today I'm drinking. This is a Cono Sur Bicicleta, and this is what I'm drinking at the moment. And it's a wine that I actually keep coming back to because it's a nice little white wine. It's Pinot Grigio. This is a 2017 in this particular case, and it's very lemony. It's got those lemony citrus overtones. The finish is not particularly long, but it's a nice medium finish, and it's just like a light, easy drinking wine, and it's inexpensive. It's one of those things I like. It's a wine that you can have every day because it's not going to set you back an arm and a leg.
Very, very nice. And obviously, as you said here, we've seen this one before. So, hey, I know that you are a huge fan of Chilean wine. And so, hey, I'm a
huge fan of lots of different wines. But yes, I mean, there's some nice stuff that comes out of Chile. There's no question. But, I like lots of different things. What can I say?
I am so remiss. I just realized I was like, and you said sort of like icing on a cake. I am so remiss because yesterday we were doing the show. I got so caught up in kind of in what we were doing. Let's see. Yesterday on the program we were talking with Scott Schober. He's our cybersecurity expert. I forgot to mention on the air, I'll mention it today, a day late, take all my beatings. Yesterday was Craig Crossman's birthday. So, yeah.
Happy birthday, Craig.
Happy birthday, Craig, indeed. I feel so bad.
Hey, let's sing, you and me, okay? You ready?
All right, here we go.
Come on, do it. Happy birthday to you,
Craig. Oh.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Craig.
Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday to you.
Oh, that was beautiful. But yeah, I mean, trust me, we took Craig out for lunch and dinner, and got cake for him. We did the whole thing behind the scenes, but I did not mention it on the air, so I feel remiss about that. But
we sang today. We did it. We sang from the heart.
Absolutely.
From the heart.
Absolutely.
Which is inside my body.
Absolutely. So Craig, happy birthday, and of course, don't want to miss that again. We'll do better next year. So with that being said, and the wine done, I know, wag. With that being said, and the wine done, why don't we go ahead and get into some Linux that might intrigue the Linux audience? So
that would be awesome. Let's.
There we go. And actually, sorry about that. While we let the connection kind of settle out there for just a second, hopefully everything gets back up and running here in just a moment. But everyone, once again, if you're just joining us, Marcel Gagne, Cooking with Linux. I think we can now hear him. Sorry, I had to kind of cut you off there, but your connection. Oh, and actually, he just dropped. So that's even worse. Okay, and so we're about to get into news, rumors, and conspiracy theories as far as Linux goes, and I think the first one that we're going to discuss as soon as he gets back is indeed this one about, of course, Linus Torvalds. He is, of course, the developer of the Linux kernel, the little kernel of constant in every Linux distribution. Of course, that's what people kind of start editing or adding to on top of. And yeah, he is taking a step back from the Linux community and from developing the Linux kernel to quote unquote learn empathy, because as we know, it's been a bit of a rocky ride for him these past couple of years working with Linux. And hey, to be fair, it's a pretty thankless job to work in the Linux community. So hopefully we're back. And Marcel, are you there? Marcel, can you hear me?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, for goodness Skype.
I know. It's not ideal. And all right, so we hear you. You're back. You're good to go. And yeah, I was just introducing the first topic while we were letting the connection get back together. And I was just telling them about Linus Torvalds and how He's had a rocky go of it the past couple of years. I don't know.
I don't want to feel, I don't want to feel too sorry for Linus here, but Linus is famous in the community for being, how shall we say, a little coarse. Okay.
Right.
Especially when he's talking to the developers on the Linux kernel development list, which is where, all the conversation, I don't know about all the conversation, but a lot of the conversation that happens in terms of people submitting code to the Linux kernel and so on. But he's been known to use expletives, to swear at people, to tell them that they're that they suck, that their code is horrible. I mean, we're like the works, okay? Like he does not have a reputation for being a particularly friendly guy that way. If you meet Linus in person, he's a sweetheart. I mean, I've met him on a couple of occasions, and he's like, I've never seen him holler or scream at anybody or whatever. He seems to be on his best behavior. But as soon as you put him behind a screen, apparently, and he's chatting in a development forum, it's a completely different situation. And I mean, there's a subreddit dedicated to Linus's rants. Okay, that should tell you something.
Pretty infamous, yeah.
The fact that they can fill up something like that says something, and it's not really something very good, unfortunately. But what happened is he was I've linked to an interview or to an article on CNBC. I mean, if you just search for Linus Torvalds and empathy, you'll find something. And he's basically saying that he's going to step away from kernel development for some period of time.
That's interesting. I thought if you would search a Linus Torvald and empathy, it would come back empty search result. So that's why he's taking. Thank you. I know, but yeah, go ahead.
Surely you've got that sound effect queued up, ready to go somewhere, right?
I have all these sound effects. I have drum roll, waiting music, applause. No, actually, I don't. No, all my, and this actually has to go back to Audacity. I have all these sound effects, and I kind of cut them up, edit them in Audacity, and some of them just get lost in the shuffle of just doing the show. So I don't have a rim shot queued up.
I do. But anyway, so Linus basically was in an interview, and he said, I'm going to step away. I'm going to learn how to be how to be a nicer person, how to deal with people. And and kudos. I mean, I think that it's something that needs to happen. I mean, the fact of the matter is, you've got people who jump on these lists, and not everybody wants to be beaten up, especially when they're doing their best to contribute to a project. I mean, it shouldn't necessarily be that way. Now, what's interesting about that to me is that basically, in the same breath and around the same time, the Linux development group, or Linux as a development group, introduced a code of conduct, which basically says that to quote Bill and Ted, be excellent to each other. It goes into obviously more detail than that, but the idea is that people have to be treated with respect. People have to be have to be treated like human beings, is really what it comes down to. And and some people are pointing at the idea that Linus is in a family with 3 daughters and his wife, so he's surrounded by women, and he has to learn to behave at some point.
And that's actually something I literally just Googled. It's here on my, kind of on my main screen. If he had kids, and you have children, I'm hopefully closer to being a child than having kids. But I will say that I've heard a lot of people say that having kids teaches you patience that you never knew you had. And I was thinking,
if you're lucky,
if you're lucky, and I guess. You mentioned him in person, and he does have kids. Maybe he's very good about separating his work life and his professional and his private life, where his professional life seems to have a completely different tint to it as to his personal life. Because hey, he has a whole family. I'm sure he's a lovely person. It's just that separation that seems to be the problem.
Yeah, and unfortunately. Being online for some people, and I mean, you and I don't have to go far to find examples of this. I mean, there are tons of people who are literally at their worst online,
mm-hmm.
and by at their worst, I mean they're like maniacs. They turn into animals. Whereas you meet them in person, and it's like, well, you're a nice person, but you put them behind a keyboard, and they turn into absolute monsters.
Yeah.
And it's almost like it says the guy who's drinking wine here. It's almost like the alcoholic who turns into a monster. After having had a few drinks, by the way, I'm slightly sipping a glass of wine here, but they're like different people. They go online, and it's almost like they don't understand that when you're sitting in front of a computer, there is still another human being on the other side that you're dealing with, that you're talking to, that you're conversing with. They think it's just bits and bytes, or they think it's just words on a screen, as opposed to an actual human being who will feel something when you attack them on the other side. So it's not just a Linus problem. It's a problem with countless people who can't seem to understand that there is an actual link between what happens on the screen and the fact that there are real people on the other side. So
and according to his statements to the public and how he kind of introduced this topic, he said that he's not burnt out. He still likes he still wants to continue his work with Linux. This is not him stepping away from any kind of development. It's just he has to take a break to reflect on how he's going to deal with these interpersonal relationships, but he's going to come back, and he's hopefully going to be better for it and continue work on what he's like. Again, he's not stopping, I guess is the point.
I don't think that there's anything, I don't think. There's nothing wrong with a code of conduct that, with a code of conduct for almost any organization, when you come right down to it, that basically at its core says that, you need to respect people. And what's interesting, of course, is as if you take a look at my show notes, you'll see that one of the people who came out and said something about that right afterwards. I have to say this because to me this says something, and it emphasizes something that I said about how people online. And in this case, it was Richard Stallman, who is actually one of the founders of the Free Software Foundation, and he's actually the president of the GNU Foundation. President of the Free Software Foundation, but one of the founders of the GNU organization. Anyway, and he came out, and I've got the look here, and of course Richard is famous for smacking Linux around. He's the guy that doesn't like the fact that it's called Linux. He wants it to be called GNU Linux, and the Free Software Foundation has been trying to come up with an alternative to the Linux kernel for ever. A long time, and he actually posted this, and I'm going to read it, for the benefit of the people that aren't looking at their screens at the moment.
Sure.
And of course, he always has this thing at the beginning, which is kind of amusing in his messages. To any NSA and FBI agents reading my email, please consider whether defending the U.S. Constitution against all enemies, foreign or domestic, requires you to follow Snowden's example. I don't even know why this shows up in his messages, but there you go. So so that's just his header, okay? And then he says, I disapprove of strict codes of conduct. They feel rigid and repressive to me. However, since I have never participated in Linux development, the Linux code of conduct will not affect me. Note that Linux is a kernel, nothing more. Linux kernel is redundant, blah, blah, blah. And he shows links to the Free Software Foundation to show you just how little he thinks of the Linux kernels.
Part of this is just how companies deal with deal with their audience, and this is something that I actually heard something about, where companies can't just be companies anymore. Linux can't just be the Linux kernel development. Companies can't just be agnostic, but they need to have some sort of values. And to an audience member, and it sounds like I'm paying you they have to, but people really do gravitate to organizations that have similar values to them. And not calling each other meanie heads on the internet might be one of your values. And kind of saying that in a public place is a good thing, I guess. So
I have no problems with this whatsoever. I think there needs to be an opportunity. Perhaps the key word that I should take from Richard's message there, which I grant you I'm making fun of, but perhaps the key word that should come out is the word strict codes of conduct. Mm-hmm. I do think that codes of conduct are important because, if anything else, what it does is it provides an opportunity to say, look, this is not how we as a group behave. Okay, people are going to be jerks every once in a while. It's going to happen. Okay, you're going to have a bad day. You're going to get up on the wrong side of the bed. Somebody's going to say something that you take as a personal attack. Whether it is a personal attack or not is not the point. But you're going to feel things like that, and you're going to feel because you're a human being. But so there has to be like, that little tiny, you can't have a zero tolerance code of conduct, I guess is the way that I'm looking at it. But to enshrine values in your company or in your organization that says, look, we recognize that this is not some faceless body that, is hiring you as a drone, but it's an organization that we all belong to and we all try to work together to achieve whatever the end might happen to be, even if it's just your paycheck. But we want to make it so that this is not a poison environment for you to work in or for you to contribute to. I cannot see anything wrong with that at the core, like at all.
And I guess really what you're describing there, if and this is just putting things down on paper. A lot of people are already doing this. This isn't something that you put down and everyone has to suddenly, I have to change the way that I think, feel, act, and behave on this forum. It's like, no, the vast majority of people are already good people. This is just something that we can point to and the outliers and say, look, you see how, and maybe someone's pointing at Linus and going, hey, Linus, you see how you told this person he can go do something to himself very, very bad? Yeah, that's not good. You can't do that, Linus.
And I mean, and I don't want to put too much a fine point on this, but I mean, some of the things that he said, like if you go back and you take a look, some of it is pretty damned awful. Like I've never seen anybody who does crap as crappy as you do. Why don't you just kill yourself and do the world a favor? Like we're not talking minor. I think you could have done better. Nothing like that. I mean, this is like full frontal attack. So yeah, this can only be an improvement. I actually do think it can only be an improvement.
Did he, kind of have any kind of indication for how long he's going to step away? Obviously, the development of Linux is not dependent solely on this one person. But
no.
Yeah, did he say how long he's going to step away?
No. Okay. There's no fixed word, and there's all sorts of speculation in the community. I mean, some of the people that I talk to are saying that this is just it's a prelude to stepping away permanently. And as you say, the Linux kernel development does not rely, entirely on Linus. I mean, Linus is the guy who started the whole thing. He's been the if I can use that term, the father figure behind it, all this time. But he's been an abusive father sometimes. To
be clear, metaphorically, just
metaphorically. I mean, from the perspective of the kernel development mailing list. Right. So I don't think anybody knows that. Like I said, the free software community is the open source community is rife with speculation on what this actually means. But as Linux is the biggest thing in the world at the moment in the world of computers. It's in everything. Even companies like Microsoft rely on Linux these days. So it's not like it's going to go away even if Linus decides that he's just going to hang up he's going to hang it up and retire early. Whether that happens or not is another matter. Everything he says implies that, he's going to take some time off, chill, maybe do a little bit of meditation, and come back fresher and calmer and.
Yeah, and of course we'll have to definitely.
You saw the second Incredible Hulk movie before the MCU sort of blew up, right. And he goes and he meets this guru and he sits with him and he learns. And the guru slaps him in the face and he learns how to keep his heart rate down even though somebody is smacking him around so that he doesn't let the Hulk out. Mm-hmm. That sort of thing.
Right. You're right. And hopefully we never have to see that side of course, Linus again. But, yeah. And hey, look, you include the topic there. I was looking for that in the, kind of in the email. So, I mean,
should I have a link to the Incredible Hulk for this?
No, it's fine. But so all that being said, no report date, but hey, development continues, and and I think
honestly,
go ahead.
Yeah, hats off. I mean, I'm just seriously,
Yeah.
I think it's a good move. I think it's a brave move. I think the fact that he's actually come out and said, "Yeah, I was a jerk, and I want to be a better person," is commendable.
And and by the way, music in the background. Linus, if you're listening to this, if you ever need some free therapy on the air, come on, and we'll of course be happy to talk to you. So in the meantime, we'll be right back. More Computer America, more Marcel Gagne right after this. Everyone, stay tuned.
We are all Brother Wolf. 10 years ago, a group of locals banded together to create positive change. We took animals into our homes, held adoption events at local retailers, and talked to the community about our mission to help build a no-kill Asheville. A decade later, we have achieved so many victories for animals in need. There's been so much progress, yet there's still so much to do. As part of our year-long celebration, we encourage you to become a member of our special Compassionate Circle program. With a monthly donation of $10 or more, you will have behind-the-scenes access to the work we are doing at Brother Wolf. Our goal is to reach 1,000 members because we receive no government funding. Working together, we can help build and sustain no-kill communities. Learn more at compassionatecircle.bwar.org. We are a 501c3 tax-deductible organization.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. That's 800-215-4461.
And welcome back to the Computer America Show. It is 32 minutes past the hour as we continue on here. And of course, we are continuing on with Marcel Gagne, Cooking with Linux. And yeah, we're just moving off of the whole, Linus Torvalds thing. Whereas now we are going to move on to the topic of the day. Now, everyone, again, if you missed any part of today's program, check us out wherever podcasts are heard, be it Google, iTunes, iHeartRadio, so on and so forth, and you can check out, everything we've talked about so far. Now, even camera effects, that's pretty advanced. But, and for anyone out there watching the video portion, you can see myself as well as Marcel Gagne. And Marcel, again, thank you for continuing on. Let's go ahead, switch gears into, of course, the topic of the day. My favorite, yeah. Something obviously if you just Google Steam, like literally just Steam, yeah, you're right. Yep. And by the way, real quick, they called them steam machines. That was yeah, right. Right, and steam machines, and actually that was their first foray into kind of a pseudo quote unquote kind of console, but really it was just the operating system, and then anyone from Alienware or any other hardware manufacturer could build their own Steam machine and then upload the operating system onto it. So. Right. The Steam distribution, I believe, do they just call that one? It's like Steam Big Picture or something like that, where it's just simply everything Steam, or okay, right, and yeah, go ahead. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. I think you're thousands. You are, yeah. Mm-hmm. I am indeed. We, whenever something really interesting goes on there, we always, of course, try to promote it here on the show. And if I'm not mistaken, please correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. Humble Bundle is when they bundle a ton of games. They reach out to developers. They include their games into a single download, and they have like a minimum amount where, maybe $5, $10. You get like, in some cases, hundreds of dollars worth of games, and you get to decide if your money goes to charity, the developers, or the distribution platform. It's or the artist. Like, you get to choose where your money goes. So it's money for a good cause and a great way to get a lot of really good games. Hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yep, and let's see. I think the last one I did was one that included Civilization because I like the Civilization games. So yeah, I mean, yeah, cannot speak highly enough of them. So glad that you mentioned them, and of course, Steam, just proving that originally these. I guess it was Gabe Newell said that he wanted everything on Steam to be compatible with Linux because he's not a fan of of the more closed ecosystems of Windows and Apple. So he Linux was always kind of a passion for him, and it's good to see that he's kind of still living up to that. He did that was not just a fad. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Very, very cool. And as you said, Steam itself is free. The games are, in a lot of cases, not. There are free games on Steam. Do not get me wrong. But hey, this is actually a chance to get full, like really, really, really AAA games onto Linux, which before it was hit or miss. So very, very cool. True. Right. Steam is just when you talk about selection, Steam is where it's at. They are the biggest, and yeah, yeah, definitely. So, all right, there's that one. Man, we are running quickly out of time. So let's go ahead and talk a bit about the distribution focus, and then we'll move on to Audacity. So normally you pick a lot of very interesting distributions. Last time, I believe you talked about a My Little Pony one. That one was, that one was interesting. Right, yeah. You even know the theme song. That's great. And so I know. So what? Either way, distribution focus. Today's distribution is let's see. And you actually said a long dead distribution. Now there's a lot of dead code out there. There's a lot of code out there that is no longer under development. It languishes. Some people still really love it, but there's no active development going on to it. And they call that, kind of, I guess, a dead project. This seems like something in that vein, but if you could, of course, clarify this, and what is your distribution?
Linux was everywhere, and there were companies that were IPOing, and everybody was jumping on it, and Linux seemed to be like the next great thing. It was, but not in the way that a lot of people thought it was going to be. But there was a company out there at the time that billed itself as Lindos, and they promised insanely cheap PCs. Now, these were console PCs that had a distribution pre-installed, and what Lindos was, and yes, they got in trouble with Microsoft for using that name, so, the history on this is interesting enough. Maybe I should link to the Wikipedia article as well on Lindos. But what happened with Lindos is they said, you'll be able to run your Windows programs on Linux as well. So in some ways, without beating them up too much, they were a little over-promising, okay? The state of emulation for Windows programs was nowhere near good enough to make that kind of a claim. And so what they did was they made a lot of people think that they were getting effectively PCs like all their friends were getting, namely mostly Windows PCs. They made people think that at a price that was just like mind-bogglingly cheap. And part of the reason for that was, it was cheap hardware, but of course, it was loaded with free software as well. So they embarked on this model. Now, because of the Lindos name controversy, they wound up changing their name to Linspire. And I think when they became Linspire, they were bought out by another person. Now, the guy behind all this is Michael Robertson, which was also the guy behind mp3.com and a bunch of other things like that. He's a fascinating character that's worth reading up on if you want to spend a few minutes in Wikipedia. But anyway, so Linspire also had a distribution called FreeSpire, and the difference between Linspire and FreeSpire was that Linspire had some proprietary codecs, like things like to make it possible to play MP3 files, for instance, which was a proprietary codec. I'm just using MP3s as an example, but there were other things as well. Or, playing DVDs on your system, that sort of thing. And then there was a price tag associated with Linspire for precisely that reason, that, they had to pay for the codecs, for instance, that they were licensing to put in there.
Right.
Anyway, over time, Linspire sort of faded. Other distributions, kept rolling forward. Linspire, including FreeSpire, just sort of disappeared from the world, and it became sort of a footnote in Linux distribution history. Now, a new group just recently bought the rights to the Linspire name, the Linspire and FreeSpire name and distribution, and I do have links in the show notes to that. And in fact, let me just pc-opensystems.com is the company, pc-opensystems.com, and they bought the rights to it, and they've gone back into developing this distribution. So now what's interesting is the very last version of FreeSpire and Linspire is actually available for download, including a development version, a modern development version. Now, the difference, like I said, the difference was with FreeSpire, you had a distribution that was, as polished looking as Linspire, and it was, it was quite polished looking, quite nice looking. Mm-hmm. But it included no proprietary code whatsoever. So somebody to whom the importance of free software was paramount. In other words, the people who didn't want proprietary codecs, who didn't want binary blobs, and by binary blobs, I mean things like binary graphics card drivers, for instance, and wanted only open code, you could get that by installing. Now, there are distributions that did that. In fact, we've talked about them on the show as well. But that was the idea behind FreeSpire. So they announced that they were, back in business, or that the distribution was was back from the dead, like a phoenix from the ashes.
Right.
And I decided to take it out for a spin. So if you take a look, I actually do link to a YouTube video that I created on this, where I fire up FreeSpire and take a look at it, and it's kind of nice. The modern version is based on the Mate desktop, which has been made famous by distributions like Linux Mint, for instance. And Mint,
I have. I have indeed used Mint. It's very friendly, of course. Someone coming from the Windows environment, and I can see where obviously something inspired by Windows for Linux is going to be right up my alley as well. So And I guess I have to ask you, how common is it for these projects like these? And honestly, this might be the first time I've heard one of these kind of purchased, I guess, because Linux has that you've mentioned it here before, free as in beer, free as in speech, and this idea that the code goes back into the ether of development. What is up with kind of the purchasing? Are they just purchasing the name and the trademarks and things like that?
Yes. I mean, that's exactly what's happened. They've bought the rights to the name and the trademarks, and and the history that comes, that goes behind it. I mean, there's more to it. If you actually do go to the open systems where they've got the release information, there's more to it there. But they obviously wanted to keep the name, presumably with the idea that there are enough people out there that remember where Linspire was going and where the distribution was going, and wanted to capitalize on that. It's not unusual. I mean, let's face it, this is not just a Linux community thing. It's not unusual for brands to come back from the dead, so to speak. It happens a lot in marketing because there will always be a certain number of people who remember a particular brand either fondly or even just because that name sort of slipped off the tongue. And if you wanted to come out and call it like dining room Linux, if you wanted to call it dining room Linux, I mean that would be a brand new name that you would have to market.
That's true.
And you'd be starting basically from scratch. But if you picked up the name of something that already existed, then that ball is already rolling at least to some degree for you. So.
Right. All right. So you can see where they obviously did that. And by the way, we're checking out your YouTube video in the background, where we are watching you, kind of install the operating system, and then I think that this, of course, segues into Audacity because I see you here fiddling with, fiddling with a recording.
Yes, exactly. And in fact, I was doing Audacity on that video as well. So the video, it works out well because I'm covering the two things that I wanted to talk about in the second half of the show there in the video. So you can go and take a look at the video and actually see me, make mistakes and get messy. What was it on the Magic School Bus? What did she say? Get messy, make mistakes. No, what was it?
That was one show that I never actually watched.
Have I mentioned I have children?
Yes.
I watched all these things. Break things, make mistakes, get messy.
That sounds like how you get into coding too. That's good advice.
I think that's how you get into a whole heck of a lot of different. Anyway, so Audacity is kind of this. It is one of those projects that's been around for a long time. It has evolved. It does one thing, and it does one thing really, really well, which is basically give you a platform on which to do audio editing. You can do multiple tracks. You can have more than one piece of audio that you can cut, paste, move around, stitch together. You can change audio levels. You can modify the audio envelope. In other words, change the volume at different levels in it. So let's say, for instance, you've got a music track underneath and then you've got a person talking up at the top, and at various times you want to take the music down. So you can modify that envelope and just take the music down. So, in a nice smooth curve, and then bring it back up a later time. There are automatic things. There's reverb, to give you that big room effect, tons and tons of effects that are already built into the software. I have been using it quite a bit more lately because I've been working with audio quite a bit more than I have in the past. Mm-hmm. And I appreciate it more and more as time goes on, partly because of just how insanely simple it is.
I think that... Oh, yeah, and I think with Audacity in one hand and VLC Player in the other, really you have everything you need to take any kind of video, audio clip, put it into Audacity, format it any way you want, play it back on any system that you want. I mean, these tools, and of course, I'm not a strictly Linux user, but I use them all the time, even on a Windows PC. It's just, they are so insanely, kind of useful. I really recommend anyone kind of have them.
Yeah, my go-to tools for doing almost any kind of work, whether it's audio or video, for video, and again, we've covered that one on the show as well, is the Open Broadcasting Software, OBS.
Right.
Open Broadcaster is absolutely fantastic. I find it, I mean, I don't even know how I would work without this thing nowadays. For recording your desktop, but also for live streaming, which is already built into it. Audacity for manipulating audio, for straight audio files, like if you're doing podcasts, for instance. I've also done music recordings for my wife, who's a singer. I've done music recordings for her where I've created practice tapes for her to, tapes. Did I say tapes?
Same thing.
But practice CDs that she can take in the car and and listen and work on the pieces that she's working on. And it's fantastic because, of course, you can export to a variety of audio formats. That's also all built into the software, whether it's MP3 or OGG or FLAC or whatever it is that you want to work with, or just CD audio for that matter. So
one of the things that I really appreciate, using these kinds of programs is that I don't always go in knowing exactly what I'm doing. And, that's okay. Like you said, you got to break things, you got to make mistakes, but when you get messy. But something about using things like Audacity is that if you ever want help doing something, there's a 1.5-minute YouTube video out there showing you exactly how to do that one little thing that you're trying to do. That's why I really like, especially these open source projects, is that more people are using them and more people are making tutorials on how to use them better. So that's
what's crazy? Like on OBS, for instance, I did a video on OBS at one point there a little while ago, and what you're talking about, these 1.5-minute things. And I went and did, I think, a 2-minute long video because somebody was saying, how do you insert a camera? The little camera in the corner. How do you insert the camera in OBS? So I did a video basically just for that one person. Now, more than one person has looked at it since then.
Right.
But I did a video for one person so that they could figure out how to do that sort of thing. So, there are tons of things like that. And they will be, as you put it, just really short snippets. This is how you do the thing that you want to do. But like I said, Audacity has become a go-to tool with me. It is in my toolkit of things that I use constantly for creating content. And it's available for Windows. It's available for Macs. I understand that there's even a version of it. I haven't checked it out because I haven't felt a great need to, but for mobile as well. So.
I've not checked out the mobile. I know that Craig, who runs on a Mac, actually was the one who turned me on to Audacity. So, of course, I use it on Windows. You use it for Linux. And, it's the same program from one to the next, which is also very cool, that they could do that. So, obviously, very, very cool. You have a link to the, to their website, audacityteam.org. And wow, and I will say this might be a first. I think we actually covered everything we were going to today.
This almost never. Well, you know why? Why? It's because we didn't have enough time for me to insert anything else because of all the troubles that we had getting things going in the beginning. Yeah. Curse you! I shouldn't say that too loud because it's been working fine since.
Yeah, maybe next time we should do a show on the best, video conferencing or, conferencing tools, because you were actually using one that worked very, very well, which was Zoom.
Zoom is the only video conferencing tool that I've found. I'm sure there are tons of others, and maybe we should try out a whole bunch and see what happens. Yeah. But Zoom is the only one that worked without a hitch.
That one worked very, very well.
Yeah. Yeah, so I was very pleased with how that works. So maybe we'll have to try that one again next time or something. I'd rather get myself a nice stand for my phone, and then I'll just use the phone for video communications. And then that way it frees up my hands for working on my desktop the entire time. So.
I actually, and there's music playing in the background, but I actually have one by a company called Games where it's this big honking kind of thing that just holds up your phone. But I digress. The music means that we're just about done. Marcel, I'll let you have the last word. If people want to find out more about you, what you do, where you write, you of course have the introduction in the show notes. But where should people go?
Yeah, short version is you can find me on Twitter. Twitter.com/WFTL is my handle there. And it's not always Linux stuff. It's whatever happens to pop into my brain. So all the brain farts show up there. Or if you can, go to go to youtube.com/freethinkeratlarge. That's where you'll find my videos. And please subscribe, share, tell everybody, all your friends, your neighbors, your dog, your cat, your fish, all about it. And, MarcelGagne.com is my domain, and there's a cookingwithlinux.com if you want to find just the cooking stuff. But youtube.com is where a lot of my stuff shows up. youtube.com/freethinkeratlarge if you want to actually follow along with videos. So,
of course, very, very cool. And we, of course, always include those in the show notes. And Marcel, I got to say, the Linux audience that we have here on the show, whenever we kind of have to reschedule one or another, they just kind of roll with the punches. The Linux community, they're very vocal that they miss you and they demand that you come back. So looking forward to next month. And everyone, hey, thank you for tuning in to Computer America. Cheers. Have a good one.